What's happening, YouTube? My name is Immortal Coil, and today we're talking Star Wars, Anakin and Rey. There's a couple of articles out now, and a couple of my cohorts in the Fandom Menace who have gotten my wheels spinning. Now, these articles are from three different sources. They deal with Leia training Rey and the return of Anakin Skywalker as a Force ghost. So we're going to kind of look at each point here and see if we could come up with some sort of working theory for this movie. Now, The Rise of Skywalker is set to come out December 20th. Now, at this point, I can't necessarily say that I'm excited, but given the state of this sequel trilogy, no matter what the rumor, no matter what the speculation, I think we have something of a shit show on our hands. And when I hear about things like Anakin Skywalker being a forced ghost and coming back to perhaps interact with the physical world, because there's a precedent for that now. Yoda came back and shot some lightning at that tree and was able to actually whack Luke Skywalker on the noggin for shutting himself off from the Force, which I don't think that was Luke's fault. That was actually Rian Johnson's fault. And that wasn't Luke anyway, right? That was Jake. So the first article that I wanted to look at is by Lindsay Romaine of the Nerdist. Article entitled, "Will Leia Train Rey in the Rise of Skywalker?" Now, this is a very strange rumor because Rey was offered 3 lessons from Luke Skywalker, but it turned out that she was so amazing in the Force that she didn't even need it, and she could beat up Luke Skywalker with a stick. I'm sorry, Jake Skywalker. But something else that we got from that movie is that Leia Skywalker has latent Force powers that she just has never tapped. Going back to the old EU, we find in several novelizations that Leia was one of Luke's first Padawans in the new Jedi Order. But in the current Disney canon, Leia chose not to train as a Jedi. She wanted to focus more on the political stability of the New Galactic Republic. Particularly in one of the Aftermath novels concerning Leia, we find out that yes, she does have Force connection. We saw it in the original trilogy. She could hear Luke in her head, and she could feel that Luke was alive after the explosion of the Death Star. So you know that she has that. In the novelization, she would tend to get mad and like things would rattle on her walls and things like that. And in The Last Jedi, of course, we saw her flying across space at an impossible light speed trajectory straight into the airlock of her ship, right? So I suppose, flying across deep space would qualify you to train a Jedi. Sure, why not? Now, this is also what's weird, because if we were to watch what Leia actually did in the movie and what she does in the trailer, it seems like she gives conciliatory hugs to crying Rey all the time. But one thing this article points out is that in the trailer, when you see her doing her Darth Vader lightsaber toss and it comes back to her, Leia is in a jungle setting similar to Rey, and then that's where they get their hug, right? Now, because of that, I'm going to assume that this training is taking place on the Forest Moon of Endor. And if you think about Disney's new woke agenda, there's no one else who could possibly train Rey except for Leia Skywalker. No man can train Rey, but Leia can. Now, here's what doesn't make sense to me. There is an article by May Abdulbaki on Inverse.com entitled Star Wars 9 Theory Says a Surprising Force Ghost Will Help Beat Palpatine. And then we have this other article on NME.com by Charlotte Kroll. Says Star Wars fans thinks Anakin Skywalker will return in The Rise of Skywalker after Disney cancels panel. So you take those two together and it sounds like we're going to have Anakin come back and help Kylo Ren and Rey defeat the new Palpatine, right? So, but Anakin's a redeemed Jedi Knight. His Force ghost was seen on the Return of the Jedi, and according to these new rules, he can now physically interact with the corporeal entities outside of the nether realms of the Force. if Anakin comes back from the nether realms of the Force, it would make more sense to me if he trained Rey instead of Leia training Rey, because Leia has no practical Jedi training. She just like reaches into her bag of tricks as almost like a flight or fight reflex. And if it is the case that Anakin is able to interact with Force-sensitive individuals, we would get something that I wished we could have seen with Luke Skywalker, which is sometime after the Return of the Jedi, but before Kylo Ben is a Padawan of his, that he has those conversations with his father, and that he understands about things were at the end of the Old Republic and what took down the Jedi, and here's how he thinks the new Jedi Order could be better. You know, your father's the chosen one. He's going to have a strong Force presence. And all that shit that Yoda did, I would seem to think that the chosen one, fully reunited with the Force, would have an even more impressive bag of tricks. That's something interesting too, because if you watch the end of Return of the Jedi, Hayden Christensen, of course, is replacing Sebastian Shaw, but what we notice is that he is complete again. He's not a quadriplegic, so he has his limbs back, and potentially he's able to execute his full Force power. Now, if that is the use of Anakin's Force Ghost, and obviously of Luke's Force Ghost too, you have Anakin and Luke training Rey on how to lightsaber and do Force shit before Palpatine shows up. I think that would be a more realistic thing than to say that Anakin's gonna like appear before Palpatine and say like, you fucked up the galaxy enough, I'm gonna help these guys take you down. But that's the weird thing about this part of waiting for a movie to come out. It's because assholes like me go on YouTube and like kind of make up our impression of what we think we're gonna see. Now, I remember doing that too before I actually saw The Last Jedi. The internet was excited, and we were kind of like making up all these hypotheses, and I was not a YouTuber at that point, but the people that I was listening to were optimistic about it. And then we got what we got, and fandom fractured. The fandom menace became a loud voice that I really believe Disney is listening to. And listen, the odds are stacked against J.J. Abrams. I would like to have sympathy for the guy, and it's not his fault. It's Lucasfilm, the leadership at Lucasfilm. He set up something decent. Now, yeah, he rehashed episode 4, but there was enough there to go on that if Rian Johnson had been a competent writer, they could have done a lot of cool stuff, but they didn't. We got this whole think about how bad it is to be alive in the Trump era Star Wars movie, which is the height of irony here, because these creative entities totally made a political movie, and then when that movie wasn't universally lauded, they turned around and attacked their fan base with the charges that their political affiliation is outside of the political affiliation that they're promoting. And that's a terrible premise. There's a way to handle politics in a fictitious world without involving real-world politics. And I think that is a good example of what the prequels did, because they didn't necessarily have to spell it out, but the whole how a democracy turns into a dictatorship was one of the fundamental themes. So, Last Jedi bombs, you're running out of ideas, so yeah, let's bring back Palpatine. He wants to take over the galaxy one more time. Let him do that again, right?
So, there you have it. My thoughts on Anakin and Rey, Star Wars Episode 9. My name's Immortal Coil. Like, share, subscribe, drop me a comment. Let me know what you want to see covered on future editions. Savage. Check out my friends in the Fandom Collective. We're a group of channels dedicated to helping you get likes, you get subs, you get traction. Together, we'll turn around the shit show classes entertainment in 2019. And remember, things go south, things get weird, always count on your friends. Minor theories.